Overthinking. Overthinking gets a bad reputation, but here's what's actually happening. When you overthink, you're running mental simulations. Your brain is testing scenarios, predicting outcomes, and mapping possibilities before they happen. Most people call this anxiety. What it actually is advanced pattern recognition and risk assessment happening in real time. This happens because your brain is wired to process information more thoroughly. You're not just thinking about what could go wrong. You're thinking about what could happen, period. All the variables, all the possibilities. And that gives you an advantage most people don't have. You see problems coming before they arrive. You spot patterns others miss completely. You make decisions with more information factored in. In practical terms, overthinkers are better prepared. When something unexpected happens, you've usually already considered it. You've thought through backup plans. You've mapped the terrain. What looks like anxiety to other people is actually your brain doing quality control on decisions before you make them. And that's powerful. Research shows that people who engage in this kind of mental simulation perform better under pressure because they've already rehearsed scenarios mentally. You're not overthinking, you're over-preparing. And in a world where most people underthink, that's a competitive edge. Procrastination. Procrastination isn't always about laziness or poor time management. Sometimes it's your brain's way of buying processing time. When you put something off, your subconscious keeps working on it. You're not avoiding the task, you're incubating it. Here's what's interesting. Studies on creative problem solving show that people who procrastinate moderately often come up with better solutions than people who start immediately. The reason is something called the Zeigarnik effect. When you start thinking about a task but don't finish it right away, your brain keeps it active in the background. You're processing while you're doing other things. Connections form, ideas develop, solutions appear. What this means is strategic procrastination can actually improve the quality of your work. You're giving your brain time to find better approaches instead of jumping straight into the first solution that comes to mind. And when you finally do start, you often work faster and more efficiently because you've already done the mental prep work. The advantage here is depth. While other people are rushing through tasks with their first idea, you're coming in with refined solutions that your subconscious has been developing. That extra processing time isn't wasted, it's invested, and the results usually show it. Pessimism. Being pessimistic sounds like a disadvantage until you realize what it actually does for you. Pessimists are better at defensive planning. You see risks, you prepare for problems, you don't get blindsided because you've already considered what could go wrong. This is called defensive pessimism, and it's a legitimate cognitive strategy. When you expect things to go wrong, you take precautions, you build backup plans, you prepare more thoroughly, and when problems do show up, you're not scrambling, you're ready. Research shows that defensive pessimists often perform just as well as optimists, sometimes better because they've anticipated obstacles and planned around them. The thing is, pessimism keeps you realistic. You're not setting yourself up for disappointment by expecting perfect outcomes. You're managing risk intelligently. You're thinking about failure modes before they happen. And that means you avoid problems other people walk straight into because they didn't see them coming. In practical terms, this makes you excellent at contingency planning, risk management, and preparing for worst-case scenarios. Companies pay people specifically to think this way. It's called risk assessment. You do it naturally. Turns out, expecting things to go wrong is just another way of saying you're prepared when they do. Neuroticism. Neuroticism is one of the big 5 personality traits, and it's usually framed as a negative. High neuroticism means you experience more negative emotions, more anxiety, more worry. But here's what research is now showing. Neurotic individuals have heightened threat detection systems. Your brain is more sensitive to potential dangers, which means you notice problems earlier than other people do. This happens because neuroticism is linked to increased activity in the brain's threat detection network. You're processing environmental cues more carefully. You're picking up on subtle signs that something's wrong. And while that can feel exhausting, it also means you're catching issues before they become crises. What's remarkable is that this trait likely evolved as a survival advantage. Being more attuned to threats meant staying alive longer. And in modern contexts, that translates to being better at identifying risks, spotting red flags in relationships or business situations, and responding to problems before they escalate. You're not overreacting. You're reacting to information other people aren't even noticing. Studies show that people high in neuroticism are often more successful in fields that require vigilance and attention to detail. Your heightened sensitivity isn't a flaw, it's a feature. You're built to notice what others miss, and in the right context, that's exactly the advantage you need. Introversion. Introversion isn't about being shy or antisocial, it's about how your brain processes information and where you get your energy. And it comes with distinct cognitive advantages that extroverts simply don't have. Introverts process information more deeply. Your brain shows more activity in areas associated with complex thought, planning, and problem solving. This happens because introverts have higher baseline cortical arousal. Your brain is already more active, which means you need less external stimulation and more time to process internally. What this translates to is better observation skills, deeper analytical thinking, and stronger ability to work independently. You're not missing out on social interaction. You're optimizing for depth over breadth. In practical terms, this makes you better at focused work, creative thinking, and building meaningful relationships. While extroverts are energized by constant interaction, you're developing expertise through deep concentration. You notice details. You think before speaking. You form connections that other people rush past. Research consistently shows that introverts excel in fields requiring sustained attention, complex problem solving, and independent work. The advantage here is substance. You're not performing for an audience. You're actually thinking. And in a world that rewards depth, that's powerful. Pay attention to how often you notice things others miss. That's not being quiet. That's having an internal life rich enough that you don't need constant external validation. By the way, if you're finding these insights helpful, I post content like this regularly. I'd appreciate if you subscribed. Thanks. People-pleasing. People-pleasing gets labeled as weakness, but here's what's actually happening. When you're attuned to what other people want and need, you're exercising high-level social intelligence. You're reading emotional cues, predicting reactions, and navigating complex social dynamics. That's not weakness. That's sophisticated social processing. This trait develops because you're more sensitive to social feedback. Your brain is tracking how people respond to you, adjusting your behavior to maintain harmony, and managing relationships proactively. And while that can be exhausting if taken too far, it also means you're exceptionally good at building rapport, de-escalating conflict, and creating environments where people feel comfortable. What this means is people pleasers are often excellent team members, mediators, and relationship builders. You understand what motivates people. You know how to make others feel heard. You can navigate tense situations with diplomacy. Companies specifically hire for these skills. They call it emotional intelligence. You've been practicing it your entire life. The advantage here is connection. While other people are bulldozing through social situations, you're building genuine relationships based on understanding and responsiveness. The key is using this skill strategically, not letting it control you. When you're conscious of it, people-pleasing becomes a powerful tool for influence and collaboration. Perfectionism. Perfectionism is usually described as a problem, but it's actually a drive for excellence that most people don't have. When you're a perfectionist, you hold yourself to high standards. You notice details. You care about quality. And while that can create stress, it also produces remarkable work. This happens because perfectionists have lower tolerance for error and higher standards for completion. Your brain is wired to spot flaws and inconsistencies. You're not satisfied with good enough. You want excellent. And that drive, when channeled properly, produces work that stands out. Research shows perfectionists often achieve more because they're willing to put in extra effort that other people skip. In practical terms, this makes you reliable, thorough, and excellent at catching mistakes before they become problems. You're the person who notices the typo, spots the logical flaw, or identifies the weak point in a plan. Other people might call that nitpicking. What it actually is quality control, and in any field where details matter, that's invaluable. The key is recognizing when perfectionism is helping you produce excellent work versus when it's creating paralysis. When you're using it to elevate your output, perfectionism is a superpower. You're not being difficult, you're maintaining standards. And that's what separates good work from great work. Sensitivity. Being highly sensitive means you're processing information at a deeper level than most people. Your nervous system picks up on subtle cues that others miss completely. Changes in tone, shifts in energy, emotional undercurrents. You're not being dramatic. You're noticing what's actually there. This happens because highly sensitive people have more active mirror neurons and stronger processing in areas of the brain associated with empathy and awareness. You're literally wired to perceive more. And while that means you can get overwhelmed more easily, it also means you understand people, situations, and environments with unusual clarity. You read between the lines naturally. What's interesting is that sensitivity correlates strongly with creativity, intuition, and emotional intelligence. You're picking up on patterns and connections that other people don't register. You understand how people feel before they say it. You notice when something's off. And that awareness gives you advantages in relationships, creative work, and any situation requiring nuanced understanding. In practical terms, sensitive people are often natural counselors, artists, strategists, and advisors. You see what others miss. You feel what others ignore. And in a world where most people are operating on the surface, your depth is a competitive edge. The sensitivity isn't a flaw, it's high-definition perception. Use it. Stubbornness. Stubbornness has a terrible reputation, but here's what it actually is. When you're stubborn, you have strong conviction. You don't abandon your position just because someone disagrees. You hold your ground. And while that can create conflict, it also means you have persistence that most people lack. This trait shows up as grit in psychological research. Stubborn people are more likely to stick with difficult tasks, pursue long-term goals, and resist social pressure to give up. You don't quit easily. You don't change direction every time someone questions you. And that persistence is what separates people who accomplish difficult things from people who abandon them halfway through. What this means is stubbornness translates directly into achievement. You're not being difficult, you're being committed. When everyone else is giving up, you're still going. When people are telling you it won't work, you're figuring out how to make it work anyway. Research on successful people consistently shows that persistence, not talent, is the strongest predictor of achievement. You have that built in. The advantage here is staying power. While other people are swayed by every opinion or obstacle, you're locked in. You finish what you start. You don't get distracted. And in a world where most people quit at the first sign of difficulty, your stubbornness is actually your competitive advantage. Own it. Disagreeableness. Disagreeableness is one of the most misunderstood personality traits. Low agreeableness means you prioritize truth over harmony, boundaries over accommodation, and your own judgment over social approval. And while that makes you harder to get along with, it also makes you significantly more effective in situations that require strength. This happens because disagreeable people are less influenced by social pressure. You're willing to say no, you're comfortable with conflict, you don't need everyone to like you. And that independence gives you negotiating power, leadership capability, and the ability to make hard decisions without being paralyzed by the need for consensus. What's remarkable is that research shows disagreeable people often earn more money, advance faster in competitive fields, and are more successful as entrepreneurs and leaders. The reason is simple: you're not afraid to advocate for yourself. You set boundaries, you push back when necessary, and you don't compromise your position just to keep the peace. In practical terms, this makes you excellent at negotiation, leadership, and any situation that requires standing your ground. You're not mean. You're direct. You're not difficult. You're clear about what you will and won't accept. And in environments that reward strength, that's exactly what wins. Being disagreeable isn't a personality flaw. It's a strategic advantage. Use it intentionally. If this resonated with you, consider subscribing so you don't miss future uploads. Thanks for watching.